The phone hit the marble floor at 3:47 a.m. Nia Balogun stood perfectly still in the center of her penthouse living room, watching the cracked screen illuminate the darkness with that photograph. The image glowed against white Italian marble like a wound refusing to close. Her husband's hand, low on another woman's waist. Inside an elevator she recognized, the private lift beneath the Shilla Hotel, accessible only to those who owned Seoul's secrets. Han Seo-yeon's face tilted toward the camera with a smile that understood exactly what it was doing. Her lips curved with the precision of a woman who had practiced this expression in mirrors, perfected it for this exact moment. The caption beneath the viral post read simply, "Some things speak for themselves." Nia's reflection stared back at her from the floor-to-ceiling windows. A silhouette against Seoul's 3 a.m. skyline 23 floors above a city that would waken hours to tear her apart. She did not cry. He did not scream. She bent slowly, picked up her phone and walked to the kitchen. The cold water she poured into a crystal glass caught the city lights as she raised it to her lips. Behind her the elevator doors opened. Jang Taehyun stepped into the penthouse still wearing the same suit from the photograph. The silence between them filled the room like smoke. Taehyun stopped 6 feet from his wife, his eyes moving from her face to the phone in her hand. His jaw tightened, the only fracture in an otherwise perfectly controlled expression. "You've seen it," he said. Not a question. Nia sipped her water. "Seoul has seen it." "Nia." 37,000 shares. Her voice remained impossibly calm. "That was the count when I stopped refreshing. It's probably doubled by now." Taehyun's hand flexed at his side. In 5 years of marriage he had watched his wife navigate everything. The isolation of being African in Korea's elite circles, the whispered racism from his own family, the suffocating loneliness of living inside a criminal empire that demanded her silence. She had survived it all with grace that made his enemies nervous. But he had never seen her like this. This stillness, this absolute absence of visible emotion, terrified him. "The photo is real," he said, because lying to her had never worked. "But the context. Don't." One word. Soft as a closing door. Nia set her glass down on the counter with a click that echoed through the penthouse. She turned to face him fully, and the kitchen's recessed lighting carved shadows beneath her cheekbones, across the elegant architecture of her face. "Don't explain," she continued. "Don't justify. Don't tell me what I saw isn't what I saw. I'm not. You're wearing the same tie." Her eyes dropped to the navy silk at his throat. "You didn't even change before coming home." Taehyun's hand moved involuntarily toward his collar before he stopped himself. The gesture was small, almost invisible. But Nia caught it, catalogued it, filed it away behind those impossibly calm eyes. "Where were you tonight?" she asked. "A meeting." "With her?" The question hung between them. Taehyun's silence stretched 1 second too long. "It was business," he said finally. "Business." Nia's lips curved into something that might have been a smile on anyone else. "Is that what you call it?" Seo-yeon has connections to the Park family. The shipping contracts require. "I don't care about shipping contracts." Her voice didn't rise. That was the worst part. Taehyun had built an empire on reading people, on understanding the space between words. His wife wasn't giving him space. She was giving him nothing. "The photo was unauthorized," he said. "Someone leaked it deliberately. Someone inside my organization. Or someone beside you in that elevator." Taehyun's eyes darkened. "You think Seo-yeon?" "I think a woman who takes a selfie with another woman's husband at 2 a.m. knows exactly what she's doing." Nia picked up her glass again, swirled the water slowly. "I think a woman who posts it with that caption understands consequences." "I'll handle it." "Will you?" "Nia." "Because you've been handling her for 3 months now." Nia's gaze lifted to meet his. "You think I haven't noticed? The late meetings. The calls you take in your study with the door locked. The way your men go quiet when I walk into rooms." Something shifted in Taehyun's expression, a flicker of genuine surprise breaking through his control. "You knew. I'm your wife." Nia's voice carried the weight of 5 years. "I know everything that happens inside your empire. I know which lieutenants are skimming funds. I know which politicians are about to be arrested. I know when the harbor shipments run late because the bribes weren't high enough." She stepped closer, close enough to see the faint lines around his eyes that hadn't been there when they married. I know you, Taehyun. Better than you know yourself. Did you really think I wouldn't notice her? The penthouse felt smaller suddenly. Taehyun had commanded rooms full of men who killed on his orders. He had negotiated with Yakuza bosses and corrupt politicians and cartel representatives who smiled while planning betrayals. None of them had ever made him feel what he felt now, exposed. Visible in ways he'd spent decades learning to hide. It isn't what the photo suggests, he said quietly. Then what is it? Complicated. Try again. Nia. His voice dropped, carrying an edge of warning. Not everything can be explained right now. Because you won't explain it? Or because the truth is worse than the photo? Taehyun's phone buzzed in his pocket. Then again. Then continuously, the vibration of a crisis erupting in real time. He didn't reach for it. My men are panicking, he said instead. The photo is destabilizing perception. Rival families will see weakness. Then go manage your empire. I'm trying to manage my marriage. Are you? Nia's eyes held his without blinking. Because it seems like you've been managing Han Seo-yeon instead. The name landed between them like a blade. I need you to trust me, Taehyun said. Trust. Nia repeated the word like she was tasting something unfamiliar. You're asking me for trust at 4 a.m. while your mistress's selfie burns through Seoul's underground. She isn't my mistress. Then what is she? Again that fractional pause. That millisecond of hesitation that told Nia everything his words wouldn't. She's a complication, Taehyun said finally. One I'm resolving. Resolving? Nia nodded slowly. Like you resolved the situation with Minister Choi last year? Or resolved the problem with the Busan syndicate? Taehyun's expression flickered. Something between admiration and unease. You've been paying closer attention than I realized. I've been surviving inside your world for 5 years. Nia's voice softened, but the softness carried an edge sharper than anger. Did you think I was just decorating your penthouse? She turned away from him, walking toward the windows. Souls sprawled beneath them. Millions of lights, millions of lives, all connected to the man behind her through invisible threads of money and violence and power. Your phone is still buzzing, she said without turning around. It can wait. Can it? Now she did turn, and the city lights silhouetted her figure against the glass. Your empire is on fire, Taehyun. Your men are watching their boss's wife be publicly humiliated. Your enemies are calculating how to exploit the chaos. She paused. Go put out your fires. Not until we finish this conversation. This conversation is finished. Nia's voice carried a finality that made Taehyun's chest tighten. You have a scandal to contain. I have a decision to make. What decision? But she had already turned away, walking toward the master bedroom with steps that made no sound on the marble floor. Nia. Handle your empire. Her voice drifted back without turning. I'll handle myself. The bedroom door closed behind her with a soft click. Taehyun stood alone in his penthouse, watching the closed door, feeling something shift in his chest that he couldn't name. His phone buzzed again. He answered it. By dawn, Han Seo-yeon's selfie had been shared over 200,000 times. The comment section had become a battlefield. Half of Seoul's underground defended their boss. It's just business. Foreign women don't understand Korean ways. She should be grateful he married her. The other half circled like sharks. The African wife is finished. She'll be sent back in disgrace. This is what happens when you reach above your station. In a luxury apartment across the city, Seo-yeon scrolled through the reactions with a satisfaction she kept hidden even from herself. The selfie had been calculated, timed for maximum impact, captioned for plausible deniability. Some things speak for themselves. Ambiguous enough to deny intent. Clear enough to destroy. She poured herself champagne at 6 a.m. and watched the sunrise paint Seoul in shades of pink and gold. Her phone rang. Unknown number. You've caused quite a storm. The voice was male, Korean, unfamiliar. I don't know what you mean. The selfie, Miss Han. The one currently destabilizing Jang Taehyun's entire organization. Seo-yeon's champagne glass paused halfway to her lips. Who is this? A friend. Or rather, someone who could become a friend, depending on how the next few weeks unfold. I don't need friends. Everyone needs friends. The voice carried an unsettling warmth. especially when they're about to become very visible targets. Is that a threat? A warning? The wife isn't what she appears. Seo-yun's perfectly manicured nails tightened on her glass. The African woman? She's nothing. A trophy he collected to seem sophisticated. Is that what you think? Something in the question made Seo-yun's certainty waver. Nia Balogun has survived inside Jang Taehyun's world for 5 years, the voice continued. She's watched men disappear who crossed her husband. She's attended funerals for rivals who underestimated the family. She's smiled at politicians who wanted her dead and made them apologize to her. Pause. And you just publicly humiliated her. Seo-yun's champagne suddenly tasted flat. She can't touch me. I have connections. Your connections are about to become very interested in protecting themselves. The voice carried something like amusement. In approximately 72 hours, you're going to discover how isolated you really are. The line went dead. Seo-yun stared at her phone, watching Seoul's sunrise continue its indifferent beauty outside her windows. The champagne bubbles rose silently in her glass. Tund Okafor received the news at 5:15 a.m. in a members-only lounge in Gangnam. The space was designed for discretion. Private booths, soundproofed walls, staff who pretended not to recognize the faces that passed through. Tund had been nursing a single malt for 3 hours, watching a poker game between minor crime figures who didn't realize he understood every word they spoke in Korean. His phone buzzed with a message from a contact inside Taehyun's organization. The selfie is everywhere. The wife is silent. The boss is panicking. Tund read the message twice, then deleted it. He was Nigerian Korean, born in Lagos, raised in Seoul after his father's shipping business expanded. He'd grown up straddling 2 worlds, 2 languages, 2 sets of loyalties that never quite aligned. Now he worked as a fixer. Problems that couldn't be solved through official channels found their way to his door. Nia Balogun had been one of those problems once. 5 years ago, when she'd first arrived in Seoul as Jang Taehyun's fiancé, drowning in isolation and culture shock, Tund had been hired to help her navigate the impossible social landscape of Korea's elite criminal circles. They'd become something like friends. Or something more complicated than friendship. A connection built on shared identity and mutual survival in a country that never quite accepted either of them. Now her marriage was publicly imploding, and Tund needed to decide whose side he was on. He finished his whiskey, left payment on the table, and walked out into Seoul's humid dawn. His car waited in the underground parking structure, a black Mercedes that could have belonged to anyone. He was halfway to the vehicle when he sensed the presence behind him. Tund Okafor. He turned slowly. The man who emerged from the shadows was Korean, mid-40s, with the build of someone who'd traded violence for strategy but hadn't forgotten either skill. His suit cost more than most people's monthly salaries. "Do I know you?" Tund asked. "You know of me." The man smiled without warmth. "You've been running errands for Jang Taehyun's wife for 3 years. Arranging things she doesn't want her husband to know about." Tund's expression didn't change, but his pulse accelerated. "I don't know what you mean." "The private bank accounts she opened in Singapore. The meetings with lawyers she's kept hidden. The documents she's been gathering about her husband's business partners." Each word landed like a blow. "Nia Balogun has been preparing for something for a very long time," the man continued. "And you've been helping her." Tund's hand drifted toward his jacket pocket. "I wouldn't." The man's smile widened. "There are 3 men with clear sightlines on this location. Triggering them would be unfortunate for both of us. What do you want?" "I want what everyone wants." The man straightened his cuff with careful precision. "To understand the game being played. Because there is a game, Mr. Okafor. Has been for years. And the selfie that exploded tonight? That wasn't the beginning." He stepped closer, close enough for Tund to smell expensive cologne and something colder underneath. "That was an acceleration. Who are you?" "Someone who's been watching the Jang organization for a very long time." The man's eyes glittered in the parking structure's fluorescent light. "Someone who knows that Nia Balogun isn't the victim everyone thinks she is." He slipped a business card into Tund's jacket pocket. "When you're ready to discuss what's really happening, call that number. Before it's too late." He walked away into the shadows. Tund stood motionless for a long moment, listening to his own heartbeat echo against concrete walls. Then he pulled out the card and read the single word printed on expensive cream paper. Lee. 48 hours later, Han Seo-yun's world began to crack. It started small. A sponsorship deal that had been finalized suddenly needed additional review. An interview scheduled with Korea's most popular entertainment show was mysteriously postponed. An invitation to a charity gala hosted by the Samsung heiress was quietly rescinded. Seo-yun noticed but didn't worry. These things happened in Seoul's upper circles. Social tides shifted constantly. Then her accountant called. "There's a problem with your investment portfolio." His voice carried an edge she'd never heard before. "Several positions have been liquidated." "Liquidated? I didn't authorize." "By the firm managing your accounts. They're claiming irregularities in the original paperwork." "That's impossible. Those accounts have been active for years." "I'm aware." Pause. "Miss Han, I think you should come to my office. In person. As soon as possible." The call ended. Seo-yun stared at her phone, feeling the first cold fingers of genuine fear crawling up her spine. She called her lawyer next. Voicemail. She called her financial advisor. "I'm sorry, Miss Han is no longer a client of this firm." She called the boutique PR agency that had managed her image for years. "We're undergoing restructuring. All current clients are being transferred to other agencies." By nightfall, Seo-yun had learned a terrifying truth about Seoul's elite circles. Power didn't protect you. Connections protected you. And connections could evaporate overnight. Across the city, in a private tea room overlooking the Han River, Nia Balogun sipped jasmine tea and watched the sun set over Seoul's western skyline. She hadn't left the penthouse in 2 days. The press had surrounded the building for the first 24 hours, desperate for footage of the humiliated African wife. The comment sections had grown more vicious with each passing hour. Predictions of her deportation, her disgrace, her inevitable replacement by Han Seo-yun. None of them had seen Nia cry. None of them had seen her beg. None of them had seen her do anything at all. That silence was becoming more newsworthy than the scandal itself. Why isn't the wife reacting? What is she planning? Does she have something on him? The speculation grew wilder by the hour. Nia had watched it all from her penthouse, tracking the narrative's evolution with the precision of a chess player monitoring an opponent's moves. Now she was ready to make her own. She pressed her thumb to the screen of her phone, an encrypted device that didn't exist on any official records, and placed a call. "It started," she said when the line connected. "I saw." Tun's voice was cautious. "The selfie. The chaos. Seo-yun's accounts being frozen." "Frozen?" Nia's voice carried genuine surprise. "I didn't order her accounts frozen yet." A long pause. "Then who did?" Nia's teacup paused halfway to her lips. "That's concerning," she said softly. "Nia, someone's accelerating your timeline. Someone who knows your plans." "No one knows my plans." "Someone does." Tun's voice tightened. "I was approached this morning by a man who knew about the Singapore accounts. The lawyers. The documents you've been gathering." The silence stretched. "Describe him." "Korean. Mid-40s. Expensive suit. Gave me a card with one word. Lee." Nia's blood turned cold. "Where are you now?" "My apartment." "Leave. Tonight. Go to the safe house in Incheon." "Nia. Do it." She ended the call and set her phone on the table. Outside, Seoul's lights flickered to life. Millions of lives unaware that something had just shifted in the invisible architecture of their city's power. Nia had spent 3 years building a plan to destroy her husband's mistress without leaving fingerprints. She'd constructed escape routes, hidden assets, gathered leverage that could bring down politicians and crime lords alike. She had been patient. She had been careful. And now someone else was playing her game, using her own strategies against targets she hadn't selected yet. The question wasn't whether she had an enemy. The question was whether the enemy was outside her marriage. Or inside it. Taehyun returned to the penthouse at midnight to find his wife waiting. She was sitting in the living room, dressed in a simple cream sweater and black silk pants, looking like she'd spent the day in quiet contemplation rather than hiding from scandal. "You should eat something," she said without preamble. "There's japchae in the kitchen." Taehyun stopped in the doorway, studying her face for cracks in the composure. He found none. "You're taking this well, he said carefully. Am I? Nia rose from the sofa, walking toward the kitchen with movements that seemed deliberately unhurried. I suppose it depends on what this refers to. The photo, the accusations, the entire internet calling you. I don't read comment sections. Nia pulled a covered dish from the warming drawer. Neither should you. My men are reading them. My rivals are reading them. The narrative is becoming dangerous. Nia set the dish on the counter. Yes, I imagine it is. She met his eyes with an expression he couldn't decode. Dangerous for whom, though? That's the more interesting question. Taehyun crossed the room until only the kitchen island separated them. What are you planning? Planning? Nia's eyebrows lifted slightly. I'm planning to sleep in the guest room until further notice. Beyond that, I'm keeping my options open. Options? She plaited the japchae with precise movements. A wife in my position has several. Divorce, obviously. Though that would be complicated given your business interests. You wouldn't survive a divorce. The words came out harsher than Taehyun intended. Nia's hands stilled on the plate. Wouldn't I? Something in her voice made Taehyun take an involuntary step back. That sounded like a threat, Nia continued, her tone mild. Against your own wife. The woman you promised to protect when you brought her to this country. I didn't mean. You meant exactly what you said. Nia pushed the plate toward him. You meant that leaving your marriage would have consequences. That the world you've built is dangerous enough to destroy anyone who walks away. She leaned forward, her voice dropping to a near whisper. But here's what you haven't considered, Taehyun. In 5 years of watching you work, learning how your empire operates, meeting the men who keep it running, I've learned things. Her eyes held his without blinking. Useful things. The silence that followed was absolute. Taehyun had built an empire on intimidation, on being the most dangerous person in any room. He had perfected the art of making powerful men feel small, of communicating violence through stillness alone. His wife had just made him feel that way. What are you saying? He asked and hated the uncertainty in his voice. I'm saying that leaving you is one option. Nia straightened, her composure never wavering. Staying is another. And there are other possibilities I'm still considering. Such as? That's not your concern yet. She nodded toward the japchae. Eat something. You look tired. She walked away, heading toward the guest bedroom. Nia. She paused but didn't turn. The photo, Taehyun said. What happened in that elevator? It wasn't what? I don't want to talk about the elevator. Her voice carried finality. I don't want to talk about her. I want silence and space and time to decide what my life looks like from here. And if I can't give you those things? Now she did turn, and something in her expression made Taehyun's breath catch. It wasn't anger. It wasn't heartbreak. It wasn't any emotion he could name. It was calculation. Then I'll take them anyway, she said softly. And you'll discover exactly how much I've learned in 5 years of being your wife. The guest room door closed behind her. Taehyun stood alone in his kitchen, the japchae growing cold on the counter, feeling something he hadn't experienced in decades. Uncertainty. Not about his empire or his rivals or the scandal burning through Seoul's underground. Uncertainty about the woman sleeping in his guest room. The woman who was supposed to be his trophy. His hostage. His victim. What if she was something else entirely? What if she had been playing him all along? His phone buzzed with an urgent message from his head of security. Someone is systematically dismantling Han Seo-yeon's business connections. It's not us. It's not our allies. We don't know who's doing it. Taehyun read the message twice. Then he looked at the closed guest room door. The war hadn't begun with the selfie. The selfie was just the opening shot. And he was beginning to suspect that the most dangerous player in this game was his own wife. 3 days after the selfie went viral, Han Seo-yeon received a visitor. She'd barricaded herself in her Cheongdam-dong apartment, watching her carefully constructed life disintegrate piece by piece. Her phone had become a catalog of rejections. Sponsors distancing themselves, friends suddenly unavailable, invitations withdrawn without explanation. The woman at her door was the last person she expected. May I come in? Nia Balogun asked. Seo-yeon stared at her husband's wife, the woman she'd spent 3 months trying to replace, and felt the foundations of her confidence crack. How did you get past security? I own this building. Nia's voice carried no particular emphasis. Well, technically a shell company I control owns this building. But the practical result is the same. Seo-yun's blood turned to ice. You didn't know? Nia tilted her head with something like curiosity. The property management company you've been paying rent to for 3 years? I've controlled it for 2. Every lease application, every visitor log, every maintenance request. I've seen all of it. She stepped past Seo-yun into the apartment, surveying the space with the detached interest of a new owner. Nice place. The Bulgari lighting fixtures were a good choice. Though I would have gone with a different sofa. What do you want? I want to understand something. Nia turned to face her, backlit by the floor-to-ceiling windows. The selfie. Caption. The timing. None of it makes sense. Seo-yun's hands trembled at her sides. I was just. Please don't lie. Nia's voice remained eerily calm. You're not good enough at it and it wastes both our time. I don't have to explain myself to you. No, Nia agreed. But I would suggest explaining yourself to someone soon. Before your situation becomes truly irreversible. She walked to the window, gazing out at Seoul's skyline. Someone has been systematically destroying your career, Nia continued. Your finances. Your social connections. At first I assumed it was me, my people moving according to plans I'd put in place months ago. She turned back to Seo-yun. But then things started happening that I didn't order. Accounts frozen before I'd given the command. Interviews cancelled that I hadn't targeted yet. Sponsors retreating faster than my timeline allowed. Her eyes narrowed. Someone else is accelerating your destruction, Miss Han. Someone who has their own agenda. Seo-yun's confidence shattered. You mean, you didn't do all of this? I did some of it. Nia's honesty was almost more frightening than deception would have been. But not all. Which means someone else is involved. Someone who wanted that selfie to go viral. Someone who wanted this scandal to explode. She stepped closer, close enough for Seo-yun to smell expensive perfume and something colder underneath. Who told you to post it? No one. I decided. Who suggested the timing? Caption. The specific elevator in the specific hotel. Seo-yun's face went pale. There was a man. He approached me at a charity event. He said he wanted to help me. He said that making my relationship with Taehyun public would force his hand, make him choose me instead of keeping me hidden. And you believed him? He knew things. Seo-yun's voice had gone small. About Taehyun's business. About your marriage. About the distance between you. He said that a scandal was the only way to break the stalemate. Describe him. Korean. Mid-40s. Expensive suit. He gave me a business card. With one word on it. Nia's voice had gone flat. Lee. Seo-yun's eyes widened. You know him. Nia didn't answer immediately. She walked to Seo-yun's bar cart, selected a bottle of expensive cognac, and poured 2 glasses with steady hands. Lee Sang-hoon, she said finally. Former intelligence operative. Current freelance specialist in corporate sabotage and political manipulation. He's been watching my husband's organization for at least 3 years. She handed 1 glass to Seo-yun. And apparently he's been watching you too. Why? What does he want? That's the question, isn't it? Nia sipped her cognac without breaking eye contact. Why would a man of his resources care about a socialite and a mafia wife? She set her glass down. Unless we're both pieces in a game neither of us understands. Seo-yun's apartment felt smaller suddenly. The expensive fixtures and designer furniture revealed as what they were. Props in someone else's theater. What do I do? Seo-yun's voice cracked. Everything's falling apart. My accounts, my connections, my entire. You have 2 options. Nia's voice remained clinical. Option 1. Continue playing the role he's assigned you. The scheming mistress. The scandal starter. Watch as he finishes destroying you while using your collapse to accomplish whatever he's actually planning. And option 2? Work with me. Seo-yun nearly dropped her cognac glass. You're insane. Possibly. Nia's lips curved slightly. But consider your position. Right now you have no allies. Your former sponsors are running. Your social connections are abandoning you. The only person in Seoul who gains nothing from your complete destruction is me. You. You should want me destroyed more than anyone. Should I? Nia's eyebrows rose. You're not a rival, Miss Han. You're a symptom. My husband's choices created this situation. You simply made yourself available to fulfill them. She finished her cognac. Destroying you accomplishes nothing. Understanding who's playing us both? That's useful. Seo Yun's hands shook around her glass. You're asking me to betray. I'm asking you to survive. Nia's voice hardened slightly. Because whatever Lee Sang-hoon is planning, we're both obstacles to it. Obstacles he's actively working to remove. She walked toward the door. Think about it. But don't take too long. Your options are narrowing by the hour. Wait. Seo Yun's voice stopped her at the threshold. Why would you help me? After everything. Nia turned and for a moment, something genuine flickered in her eyes. Something that might have been pain or anger, or a grief so deep it had become indistinguishable from calm. Because whoever's manipulating this situation wanted us to destroy each other, she said softly. The jealous wife. The ambitious mistress. Two women tearing each other apart while the real enemy watches. Her eyes met Seo Yun's with an intensity that made the other woman's breath catch. I refused to give him that satisfaction. She left without another word. Seo Yun stood alone in her apartment, cognac trembling in her hand, realizing for the first time that she had never been a player in this game. She had been a pawn. And the woman she'd tried to replace had just become the only person who might keep her alive. That night Taehyun couldn't sleep. He stood on the penthouse balcony, watching Seoul spread beneath him like a circuit board of light and shadow. Somewhere in that city forces were moving that he couldn't identify. His contacts reported chaos. Business partners suddenly cautious, rival families probing for weakness, politicians withdrawing support that had once been guaranteed. The selfie had destabilized more than his marriage. It had destabilized his entire power structure. Behind him he heard soft footsteps. Nia appeared at the balcony door, wrapped in a silk robe the color of wine. You should sleep, she said. So should you. I couldn't. She moved to stand beside him at the railing. Too many thoughts. They stood in silence watching the city together. I went to see her today, Nia said finally. Taehyun's body tensed. Seo Yun. Nia's voice remained neutral. I wanted to understand the selfie. Why she posted it. Who encouraged her. And someone's playing us all. Nia turned to look at him, her face unreadable in the darkness. The scandal wasn't organic. It was engineered. By whom? Lee Sang-hoon. Former NI's. Current problem. Taehyun's expression hardened. I know that name. You should. He's been investigating your organization for years. Building a case that could bring everything down. How do you know this? Nia's silence stretched. How do you know this, Nia? Because I've been watching him watching you. Her voice carried no apology. For 3 years. Learning his methods. Identifying his sources. Understanding what he wants. Taehyun stepped back, staring at his wife like he'd never seen her before. You've been. He stopped. Started again. For 3 years. You've been conducting surveillance on a government agent. Inside my organization. Someone had to protect this family. Nia's chin lifted slightly. You certainly weren't going to do it. You were too busy with meetings and negotiations and complications. The word hung between them, carrying the weight of Han Seo-yun, of late nights, of lies that had accumulated like snow. This isn't protection, Taehyun said slowly. This is control. You've been building your own intelligence network inside our marriage. Nia's voice sharpened. Inside the life I've been forced to live because you brought me here. Trapped me here. Made me into a trophy everyone could admire but no one would protect. She stepped closer, her eyes blazing in the darkness. Did you think I would just exist for 5 years? Just smile and wear beautiful clothes and pretend not to notice the bodies and the bribes and the corruption that pays for this penthouse? I was protecting you from that world. You were using me in that world. Nia's voice dropped to a whisper. Every dinner party where I smiled at men who murder rivals. Every charity gala where I posed beside politicians who sell their votes. Every family gathering where your mother looked through me like I was invisible. Tears glittered in her eyes, the first he'd seen since the scandal began. I was your camouflage, Taehyun. Your way of seeming civilized, sophisticated, reformed. And all the while, you were lying to me about everything. Not everything. Everything that mattered. She turned away, gripping the balcony railing. The meetings with Seo Yun weren't about shipping contracts. I know because I've seen the contracts. I've seen what you were actually doing. Taehyun felt the ground shifting beneath him. What do you think you know? I know you've been negotiating a political alliance. Nia's voice steadied. I know Seo Yun is connected to the Park family through her mother's side. I know her cousin is the deputy minister who controls import regulations for half the country. She turned to face him. You weren't sleeping with her. You were acquiring her. The silence stretched between them. She was supposed to become your second wife, Nia continued. A legal arrangement that would give you access to political protection your money alone couldn't buy. A Korean wife with the right bloodlines, the right connections, the right face to show the establishment. Her voice cracked slightly. And I was supposed to become the foreign concubine. Hidden away. Quietly maintained. The embarrassing mistake you'd made before you knew better. That's not. Don't lie to me. Her voice rang across the balcony. Not now. Not after everything. Taehyun's hands clenched at his sides. It was a consideration. A possibility. I never decided. You were going to replace me. Nia's voice had gone hollow. And I was going to find out when everyone else did. When the announcement was made. When I was presented with paperwork that would disappear me from your life. She stepped closer, tears streaming down her face. But here's what you didn't know, Taehyun. Here's what none of you knew. Her voice dropped to a whisper. I've been preparing for this moment for 3 years. Since the night I overheard you discussing it with your lawyers. Since I realized that my husband saw me as a problem to be solved rather than a person to be loved. She reached into her robe pocket and pulled out a small envelope. I know everything. About your organization. About your rivals. About the governments and corporations you've bribed. About the men who've died on your orders. She pressed the envelope into his chest. And I've documented all of it. Taehyun looked at the envelope like it was a live grenade. What is this? Insurance. Nia's tears had stopped. Her voice was steady again. Evidence that could put you in prison for life. Evidence that could collapse your empire, destroy your allies, and everything you've built. Why are you showing me this? Because Lee Sang-hoon has been trying to build a case against you for years. Nia's eyes held his without blinking. Because the selfie was designed to destabilize your organization, to create chaos he could exploit. She paused. And because I'm the only person who can stop him. Taehyun's mind raced. You've been, this whole time. I've been surviving. Nia's voice carried a weariness that aged her years. And planning. And waiting for the moment when my options ran out. Options for what? For you to choose me. Her voice broke slightly. For you to stop looking at Korean socialites and political connections and remember why you married me in the first place. The vulnerability in her voice sliced through Taehyun's defenses. I remember, he said quietly. Do you? Nia's laugh was bitter. Because for 3 years I've been watching you forget. Watching you treat me like furniture. Watching you plan a future that didn't include me except as an obligation. I was trying to protect the family. You were trying to upgrade. Nia's voice hardened again. And you almost succeeded. But then Lee Sang-hoon decided to accelerate things. To force the scandal before you were ready. To create exactly this moment of chaos. She took the envelope back from his hands. Which means we have a choice. We can tear each other apart while he picks up the pieces. Or we can recognize that we're both being played, and respond accordingly. Taehyun stared at his wife. The woman he'd married 5 years ago, who had somehow become a stranger and a revelation at the same time. What are you suggesting? An alliance. Nia's voice carried no romance. A temporary partnership to neutralize the real threat. After that. She paused. After that we can decide what we really want. Seoul's lights glittered beneath them. Millions of lives unaware of the war being negotiated on this balcony. And if I refuse? Then I'll handle Lee myself. Nia's voice went cold. And I'll handle you afterward. And everyone will learn exactly how much a Nigerian woman can accomplish in Korea when she has nothing left to lose. The silence stretched between them. Taehyun looked at his wife. really looked at her for the first time in years. Saw the intelligence behind her beauty. The steel beneath her grace. The danger that had been hiding in plain sight. I underestimated you, he said finally. Yes. Nia's voice carried no satisfaction. You did. I'm sorry. Save your apologies. She turned toward the penthouse. They won't mean anything until this is over. He paused at the door. I'm moving back into the master bedroom tomorrow. For appearances. We need to present a united front until Lee is handled. And after. Nia looked at him over her shoulder, and for a moment, something softened in her expression. A ghost of the woman who had loved him once before everything became so complicated. After, we'll see if there's anything worth saving. She disappeared inside. Taehyun stood alone on the balcony, holding the weight of revelation. His wife had been playing a game he hadn't known existed. And somehow that made him want her more than he had in years. The selfie was never just a scandal. It was bait. Han Seo-yeon has become an unexpected pawn. Lee Sang-hoon's true agenda remains hidden. And Nia Balogun has revealed herself to be far more dangerous than anyone realized. But the real question remains. When the war ends, which side of the marriage will survive? The morning after Nia's revelation, Seoul woke to a new scandal. Han Seo-yeon's financial records had leaked to 3 major outlets simultaneously. The documents painted a picture of systematic tax evasion, suspicious foreign transfers, and connections to a shell company linked to a criminal enterprise under federal investigation. None of it was true. All of it was devastatingly effective. In her Cheongdam-dong apartment, Seo-yeon watched the news coverage with trembling hands. Her face appeared on split screens beside diagrams of money flows she'd never authorized, accounts she'd never opened, connections she'd never made. Her phone rang. Unknown number. Do you understand now? Nia's voice was clinical. This is what he does. This is what happens to people who become inconvenient. You did this. No. Nia paused. Lee did. He's dismantling you publicly to force my husband's hand. To make Taehyun choose between defending you and admitting the affair, or abandoning you to prosecution. But the records are fake. Prove it. Nia's voice carried no sympathy. Prove it fast enough to matter, while every prosecutor in Seoul is suddenly interested in your financial history. Seo-yeon's breath came in short gasps. What do I do? You have one option left. Nia's voice dropped. Come to the penthouse tonight. 9 p.m. Tell no one. Bring everything you have on Lee Sang-hoon, every conversation, every message, every piece of evidence that he manipulated you. You want me to come to your home? After everything. I want to end this. Nia's voice hardened. The scandal. The manipulation. All of it. But I can't do it alone, and neither can you. The line went dead. Seo-yeon stared at her phone, watching her life collapse on the muted television screen. She had 2 choices. Trust the wife of the man she'd been trying to steal, or face Lee Sang-hoon's destruction alone. Neither felt survivable. But only one offered the possibility of fighting back. That afternoon, Taehyun summoned his inner circle. They gathered in a private conference room beneath one of his legitimate businesses. A venture capital firm that laundered approximately $40 million annually through strategic investments. The room was soundproofed, swept for surveillance twice daily, and contained men who had killed on his orders. The situation has escalated, Taehyun said, standing at the head of the table. Someone is coordinating attacks on multiple fronts. The selfie, the financial leaks, the systematic dismantling of our political allies. Lee Sang-hoon. Young Min-ho, his head of security, spoke the name with evident distaste. Former NIS. Has resources we can't match directly. His background isn't the issue. Taehyun's voice remained level. His objective is, why target my organization now? Why use Han Seo-yeon as bait? Personal vendetta? Another lieutenant offered. Lee doesn't do personal. Min-ho shook his head. Everything he does serves a strategic purpose. If he's targeting us, someone's paying him to do it. Who has that kind of money? Taehyun's eyes swept the table. Who benefits from my organization's collapse? Silence fell. The answer was obvious. Everyone. Rival families who'd been pushed aside. Political figures whose corruption had been leveraged. Foreign interests blocked from entering Korean markets. The question wasn't who wanted him destroyed. The question was who had finally figured out how to do it. There's something else. Minho's voice carried hesitation, unusual for a man who'd executed rivals without blinking. Your wife has been active. Taehyun's expression didn't change. Explain. Her movements over the past week. Secret meetings. Encrypted communications. She's running an operation we weren't aware of. I'm aware of it now. The room went still. She's been gathering intelligence on Lee's network, Taehyun continued. Building profiles on his sources, his methods, his pressure points. She's been doing this for 3 years. Minho's eyes widened. 3. My wife is not the liability you assumed. Taehyun's voice carried an edge. She's an asset I failed to utilize. That changes now. He pulled out a folder and slid it across the table. These are her findings. Lee has sources inside our organization, people who've been feeding him information for years. I want them identified and contained by tomorrow. Minho opened the folder and his face went pale. This level of documentation. How did she? My wife is very observant. Taehyun's voice carried something like pride. She's also very patient. Something I'm beginning to appreciate. He stood, signaling the meeting's end. Find the leaks. Plug them. And prepare for the possibility that our enemy is more sophisticated than we assumed. And Lee himself? Minho asked. Taehyun paused at the door. Leave him to my wife. She's earned the right to handle this personally. That evening, Nia prepared for war. The penthouse had been swept for surveillance 3 times. Additional security had been posted throughout the building. Everything was in place for a meeting that could either save her marriage or destroy it completely. She stood before the bathroom mirror, applying makeup with precise strokes, concealer that erased sleepless nights, lipstick that projected confidence she didn't entirely feel. You don't have to do this. Taehyun appeared in the doorway, watching her reflection. Yes, I do. Nia's voice didn't waver. Han Seo-yeon is a liability, but she's also an asset. She has direct evidence of Lee's manipulation. Evidence we need. You're inviting your husband's mistress into our home. I'm inviting a witness into our operation. Nia turned to face him. There's a difference. Is there? The question hung between them, carrying years of accumulated pain, jealousy, and unresolved emotion. You chose her, Nia said quietly. Or you were going to choose her. The reasons don't matter anymore. What matters is that Lee used that choice to start this war. And when the war ends? When the war ends, we'll have a different conversation. Nia's voice hardened slightly. One where you explain exactly why you thought replacing me was the solution to your political problems. Taehyun's jaw tightened. It wasn't about replacing. Don't. Nia held up her hand. Not now. Not yet. We have an enemy to destroy first. She walked past him into the bedroom, selecting an outfit that projected authority without aggression. Black silk blouse, tailored gray pants, heels that added 3 inches to her height. Where will you be during the meeting? She asked. Watching. From the study. Taehyun's voice carried reluctance. You're sure you want to handle this alone? I need her to trust me. Nia fastened a simple gold necklace, one he'd given her for their first anniversary. She won't trust me if my husband is looming in the background. She shouldn't trust you at all. No. Nia's smile was small and cold. She shouldn't. Han Seo-yeon arrived at 9:07 p.m. She looked smaller somehow, diminished by the weight of scandal and fear. Her designer clothes hung differently on a body that had forgotten to eat. Her makeup couldn't quite conceal the dark circles beneath her eyes. Nia led her to the living room without comment. Tea? Nia asked. Or something stronger? Water. Seo-yeon's voice was hoarse. Just water. Nia poured from a crystal pitcher, watching the other woman's hands tremble as she accepted the glass. Before we begin, Nia said, settling into an armchair across from the sofa, I need you to understand something. Taehyun looked up wary. I don't forgive you. Nia's voice remained calm. I don't think I ever will. You targeted my marriage knowing exactly what you were doing. You smiled at me at charity events while planning to take my place. Seo-yeon's face went pale. But forgiveness isn't why we're here. Nia continued. We're here because a man named Lee Sang-hoon has been using both of us as pieces in a game we didn't know we were playing. And the only way to survive that game is to stop being pieces and start being players. She leaned forward. So, tell me everything. The story that emerged over the next 2 hours was worse than Nia had expected. Lee Sang-hoon had approached Seo-yeon 8 months ago at a gallery opening. Charming, sophisticated, apparently well-connected to Seoul's political establishment. He'd presented himself as a consultant who helped ambitious people navigate Korea's complicated elite circles. He'd known everything about her. Her family connections, her social aspirations, her growing attraction to Jang Tae-hyun. He'd positioned himself as an ally, offering advice that always seemed to align with her own desires. He suggested the approach, Seo-yeon admitted. The strategy of making myself visible to your husband. Available but not aggressive. Present at the right events, absent from the wrong ones. And the selfie? His idea. Seo-yeon's voice cracked. He said that going public would force Tae-hyun to make a choice. That the resulting scandal would accelerate everything, bring the affair into the open, make your position untenable, create space for me to step in. Instead, it created chaos he could exploit. I didn't realize. Of course you didn't. Nia's voice carried no sympathy. You were thinking about what you wanted. He was thinking 3 moves ahead. She stood and walked to the window, looking out at Seoul's nighttime sprawl. Lee isn't interested in your relationship with my husband. He's interested in destroying my husband's organization. You were just the match he used to start the fire. Then why destroy me too? Because you're a loose end. Nia turned back to face her. You know he manipulated you. You could testify against him. So he's eliminating you before you become a problem. The color drained from Seo-yeon's face. What do I do? You give me everything. Nia walked back to the sofa, standing over the other woman. Every message, every recording, every shred of evidence that Lee manipulated this scandal. In return, I'll make the financial investigation disappear. You can do that? My husband controls 3 prosecutors and a judge. Nia's voice carried no pride in this fact. The leaked documents will be discredited. Your accounts will be unfrozen. Your life will resume. And then you leave Seoul. Nia's voice hardened. Quietly. Permanently. No interviews, no memoirs, no sudden attacks of conscience that make you want to tell your story. You want me to disappear. I want you to survive. Nia leaned closer. Which is more than you deserve but less than I need. Your testimony against Lee is worth more than my satisfaction. Seo-yeon's hands twisted in her lap. And if I refuse? Then Lee finishes destroying you and I don't lift a finger to stop him. Nia's voice went cold. You'll face prosecution for crimes you didn't commit, using fabricated evidence you can't disprove, backed by resources you can't match. He straightened. Your choice. But make it now. 20 minutes later, Nia had everything. Seo-yeon's phone contained months of messages from Lee, careful manipulations disguised as friendly advice. Her email archives held documentation of his suggestions, his connections, his systematic positioning of her as a weapon against the Jang organization. It wasn't enough to destroy Lee, but it was enough to understand how he operated. There's something else, Seo-yeon said as she prepared to leave. Something I didn't mention. Nia paused. What? The night of the selfie. Lee called me afterward, congratulated me on the photo going viral. But he said something strange. What did he say? He said the real target wasn't your husband. Seo-yeon's voice dropped to a whisper. He said the real target was always you. After Seo-yeon left, Tae-hyun emerged from his study. You heard everything? Nia asked without turning. Yes. And? You're remarkable. His voice carried genuine admiration. Terrifying but remarkable. I learned from the best. Nia finally turned to face him. Watching you negotiate with people who wanted to kill you. Observing how you manipulated outcomes without appearing to manipulate anything. I never intended for you to. I know what you intended. Nia's voice cut him off. You intended for me to remain decorative. Visible but harmless. The African trophy wife who added exotic polish to your image. That's not. It is. Nia's voice cracked slightly. For 5 years that's exactly what it was. Every time you Dismissed my opinions about business. Every time you changed the subject when I asked about your work. Every time you treated me like a child who couldn't handle difficult truths. She walked toward the window, putting distance between them. You married a woman from a family of traders who've been navigating complex negotiations for generations. You married someone who speaks 5 languages and grew up watching her father manage business relationships across 3 continents. She turned back, her eyes blazing. And you decided I was too fragile to help you. Taehyun was silent for a long moment. You're right, he said finally. Nia blinked. What? You're right. He crossed the room until he stood an arm's length from her. I underestimated you. I made assumptions based on, he paused. Based on prejudices I didn't know I held. Prejudices. About women. About foreigners. About who could be trusted with power. His voice dropped. I was wrong. The admission hung between them, heavier than the scandal, more significant than the war being waged against their marriage. What changed? Nia asked quietly. You did. Taehyun's eyes held hers. Or rather, you revealed who you'd been all along. And I realized that the woman I'd been taking for granted was the only person who could save everything I'd built. I'm not doing this for you. I know. He stepped closer. You're doing it for yourself. For your survival. For the future you've been planning since you realized I was going to betray you. Then why are you here? Because I want to be part of that future. His voice dropped to a near whisper. Because watching you dismantle our enemies with perfect precision made me remember why I pursued you in the first place. Nia's breath caught. You pursued me because I was different. Exotic. An acquisition that proved your sophistication. I pursued you because you saw through me. Taehyun's hand rose, hovering near her face without touching. From the first moment we met, you saw who I really was. And you weren't afraid. His fingers brushed her cheek, the lightest possible contact. Everyone in my world is afraid of me. You never were. I was afraid of disappointing you. Nia's voice cracked. Of failing to become what you wanted. Of losing the life I'd built here even when that life was suffocating me. And now I'm not afraid of anything. Her eyes met his with blazing clarity. Because I have nothing left to lose. Taehyun's expression shifted. Something cracked behind the careful control he always maintained. What if I gave you something to lose? Like what? Me. His voice dropped. My genuine attention. My actual partnership. The marriage we were supposed to have instead of the performance we've been giving. Nia stepped back, breaking the contact. Pretty words. From a man who was planning to replace me a week ago. I wasn't planning. Stop lying. Her voice hardened. I have documentation of your conversations with the lawyers. The timeline for my transition. The financial provisions for my comfortable retirement. Taehyun's face went pale. You knew exactly what you were planning to do, Nia continued. You just hadn't decided when to do it. Taehyun was the upgrade. I was the problem being solved. Things have changed. Nothing has changed except that I've become useful. Nia's voice cut like a blade. You need my intelligence. My documentation. My understanding of Lee's network. So suddenly I'm a partner instead of a liability. She walked toward the master bedroom. Don't mistake strategic value for reconciliation. We're not fixed. We're not healed. We're not anything except temporarily aligned against a common enemy. And when that enemy is defeated... Nia paused at the door. Then we'll see what's left of us. She closed the door behind her. Taehyun stood alone in the living room, watching the closed door, feeling something he hadn't experienced in years. Not desire. He'd felt that before briefly in the early months of their marriage before business consumed everything. This was different. This was wanting. Wanting to know her. To understand her. To earn the trust he'd so carelessly squandered. His wife had become a stranger. And somehow, that made her more fascinating than she'd ever been when he thought he knew her. 3 days later, Tund Okafor resurfaced. He'd been hiding in the Incheon safe house as instructed, watching the situation in Seoul escalate through encrypted communications. The news coverage had shifted. Han Seo-yeon's financial scandal was being quietly dismantled, the leaked documents discredited as fabrications. Nia was winning. But Tund knew something she didn't. His phone rang with an encrypted call. Mr. Okafor. Lee Sang-hoon's voice carried an amusement that made Tun's skin crawl. I thought we might talk. I have nothing to say to you. On the contrary. You have a great deal to say, about the woman you've been protecting, the secrets she's been keeping and the plans she's been making. Nia isn't. Nia Balogun has been building leverage against her husband for 3 years. Lee's voice dropped. She's documented enough to destroy his organization, his political allies and half the criminal infrastructure of Seoul. Did she tell you what she planned to do with that leverage? Tun's blood went cold. I'll take your silence as a no. Lee continued. She was going to use it to negotiate her freedom. To leave Seoul with enough money to disappear, enough information to protect herself, and enough destruction to ensure no one came after her. You're lying. Am I? Lee's voice hardened. She's been planning to burn everything since the moment she realized her husband was going to replace her. The only question was timing. Then what changed? The selfie. Lee's amusement returned. My little intervention. It forced her hand before she was ready. Now she's improvising, and improvisation creates mistakes. What do you want from me? I want you to ask yourself a question, Mr. Okafor. Lee's voice dropped to a near whisper. When this is over, when the dust settles, which side do you want to be on? The side of a man whose empire was always built on blood? Or the side of someone willing to tear everything down to set things right? You're not setting anything right. You're just creating chaos for your own benefit. Perhaps. Lee acknowledged. But at least I'm honest about it. Ask yourself, is Nia Balogun honest about anything? The line went dead. Tun stared at his phone, feeling the ground shift beneath him. He trusted Nia. Believed in her. Helped her build the escape routes she'd been constructing for years. But Lee's words planted doubt, the most corrosive substance in any alliance. What if Nia wasn't the victim he'd assumed? What if she'd been playing everyone, including him, from the beginning? In Seoul, unaware of Tun's conversation, Nia prepared for her next move. The documentation she'd gathered on Lee's network was extensive, but incomplete. She knew his sources, his methods, his pressure points, but she didn't know who was funding him. Someone with deep pockets was bankrolling this operation, someone who wanted the Jang organization destroyed badly enough to invest years and millions of won. She needed to find that someone. Which meant she needed to take a risk. You want to do what? Taehyun's voice carried genuine alarm. I want to meet with Lee directly. Nia's voice remained calm. Offer him something he can't resist. A chance to turn me against you completely. That's insane. It's strategic. She spread documents across the dining room table. Lee's endgame requires my cooperation. He needs me to testify, to provide evidence, to be the credible witness who brings down the criminal empire from within. So you'll offer yourself as bait. I'll offer myself as a double agent. Nia's eyes met his. He approaches me. I pretend to cooperate. He reveals his true backers. We destroy them together. And if he sees through you? Then you lose a wife you were planning to replace anyway. Nia's voice carried no bitterness, just statement of fact. Low risk from your perspective. Taehyun's expression darkened. You're not replaceable. A week ago you thought I was. A week ago I was a fool. He moved closer, his voice dropping. Things have changed. Have they? The question hung between them, charged with everything unsaid, everything unresolved, everything that couldn't be addressed while they were still fighting for survival. Yes. Taehyun's voice carried conviction. And when this is over I'll prove it. Pretty promises. I'll make them real. He reached for her hand and this time she didn't pull away. Give me the chance. Nia looked at their joined hands. His fingers wrapped around hers, darker skin against lighter. Two people who'd somehow found their way to this moment through years of isolation and misunderstanding. Survive first, she said quietly. Promise later. Fair enough. He didn't release her hand. But promise me something in return. What? When you meet Lee, let me have backup in position. Not to interfere, just to protect you if things go wrong. That defeats the purpose. It protects the asset. His voice hardened. You've become too important to risk losing. Strategic value, remember? Something flickered in Nia's eyes. Pain or amusement or something between. Strategic value, she repeated. Is that what we're calling it now? For now. His thumb traced a circle on her palm. Until I earn the right to call it something else. She pulled her hand away, gently this time not violently. Set up your backup, she said. But stay invisible. If Lee suspects protection, he'll vanish. He won't suspect anything. He suspects everything. Nia gathered her documents. That's why he's survived this long. She headed toward the study, pausing at the door. And Taehyun. Yes. If this goes wrong, if Lee gets what he wants, make sure my family in Lagos knows what happened. The real story, not the version Seoul tells. Nothing's going to happen to you. Promise me. The vulnerability in her voice made his chest tighten. I promise. His voice carried weight. But I'm also promising you something else. You're coming back from this meeting. And when you do, we're having the conversation we've been avoiding for 5 years. Nia's lips curved slightly. Bold assumption. Bold promises for bold times. She disappeared into the study. Taehyun stood alone in the dining room, watching the closed door, feeling something shift in the foundations of his carefully constructed life. He'd spent years treating his wife as an accessory, beautiful but ornamental, present but invisible. Now she'd revealed herself as the most dangerous person in his organization. And somehow, instead of frightening him, that made him want to know her all over again. The meeting with Lee was arranged for 3 days later. Nia spent those days preparing, studying Lee's psychology, anticipating his strategies, rehearsing the performance she'd need to give. She was going to offer him exactly what he wanted. A path to destroying her husband. The challenge was making him believe the offer was genuine. You're overthinking this. Taehyun found her in the study at 2 a.m. surrounded by documents. Lee will believe you because believing is convenient. He'll be suspicious. He'll also be arrogant. Taehyun set a cup of tea on her desk. Men like Lee always underestimate women. They assume feminine emotion makes us predictable. Nia looked up sharply. Us. Your emotions. Your motivations. Taehyun pulled a chair beside her desk. He'll assume you're acting from wounded pride, the betrayed wife seeking revenge. He won't consider that you might be operating from strategic calculation. And if he does? Then he's smarter than I'm giving him credit for. Taehyun's voice carried an edge. But he's not smarter than you. No one is. The compliment landed differently than his previous attempts. Less calculated, more genuine. You're being very supportive suddenly, Nia said carefully. I'm being realistic. Taehyun leaned back in his chair. I've watched you operate for 2 weeks now. Really watched instead of just seeing. And I've realized something. What? That if you'd wanted to destroy me, you could have done it years ago. The documentation you've gathered, the evidence, the connections, the leverage, you could have used any of it at any time. Then why didn't I? The question surprised them both. More vulnerable than Nia had intended, more revealing than she'd wanted to be. I don't know, Taehyun admitted. That's what I keep asking myself. You had every opportunity, every justification, every piece of ammunition you needed. He leaned forward, his eyes searching hers. Why didn't you use it? Nia looked at her tea, watching steam rise in delicate curls. Because destroying you meant destroying myself. Her voice came out smaller than she intended. Everything I'd built here. Everything I'd survived. The identity I'd constructed as your wife. Even if that identity was suffocating me, it was still mine. That's not the whole answer. No. She met his eyes finally. It's not. Then what else? The silence stretched between them, heavy with years of accumulated distance, broken only by the soft hum of the penthouse's climate control. Because I still loved you. Nia's voice cracked on the admission. Even when I hated you. Even when I was planning to leave. Some part of me kept hoping you'd see me, really see me before it was too late. Taehyun's expression shifted, something cracking behind the careful control. I see you now, he said quietly. Do you? Nia's voice carried years of pain. Or do you just see what I've become useful for? I see a woman who could have destroyed me and didn't. Taehyun's hand covered hers on the desk. I see someone who built weapons while I wasn't watching, then refused to use them. I see. He paused, searching for words. I see the person I should have been paying attention to all along. Nia's eyes glistened. Pretty words. True words. His grip tightened. And when this is over, when Lee is handled and the crisis passes, I'm going to spend the rest of my life proving them. You can't promise that. I can promise to try. His voice dropped. That's more than I've offered you in years. Nia looked at their joined hands, feeling something shift in her chest. One crisis at a time, she said finally. Let me survive Lee first. You'll survive. Taehyun's voice carried absolute conviction. You're the most dangerous person I've ever met. More dangerous than you? Much more. His lips curved slightly. I've always known who I was. You hid in plain sight for years, waiting for the perfect moment. He released her hand and stood. Get some sleep. Tomorrow we finalize the plan. He walked toward the door, pausing at the threshold. Nia. Yes. When you meet Lee, remember something. What? He wants you to believe you're alone. That I've abandoned you. That your only choice is to betray me to survive. Taehyun's voice hardened. Don't believe it. Whatever happens in that meeting, whatever he offers, whatever he threatens, you're not alone anymore. He left without waiting for a response. Nia sat alone in the study, surrounded by documents that could destroy empires, feeling something she hadn't experienced in years. Hope. Dangerous, fragile hope that maybe, just maybe, the ruins of her marriage contain something worth rebuilding. The meeting took place in a private room at a traditional tea house in Bukshan. Lee Sang-hoon arrived exactly on time, a man in his mid-40s with the casual elegance of someone who'd spent decades navigating power structures that didn't officially exist. Mrs. Jang. He used her married name deliberately. I must admit, I was surprised by your message. I imagine you were. Nia's voice remained perfectly controlled. Given that you've spent months trying to destroy my marriage. I've spent months trying to expose corruption. Lee settled into the seat across from her. Your husband's organization is a cancer on this city. The politicians he's bought, the police he's corrupted, the bodies buried to maintain his power. Spare me the moral posturing. Nia's voice cut through his speech. You're not a crusader. You're a mercenary. Someone's paying you to target my husband, and I want to know who. Lee's expression flickered, a momentary crack in his confident facade. What makes you think I'd tell you? Because I'm offering you something better. Nia reached into her bag and extracted a USB drive. Everything I have on the Jang organization. Financial records, political connections, documented crimes. Enough to dismantle the entire empire. Lee studied the drive without touching it. And why would you give me this? Because my husband is going to replace me with Han Seo-yeon. Nia let her voice crack slightly, the performance of a woman barely holding together. Because 5 years of loyalty means nothing to him. Because I'd rather see everything burn than watch another woman take what I built. Lee's eyes narrowed, calculating. The scorned wife, he said slowly. Seeking revenge through destruction. Call it whatever you want. Nia's voice hardened. I'm offering you the key to bringing down Jang Taehyun. Everything prosecutors have been trying to build for years. I can give it to you in a week. What do you want in return? Protection. Nia leaned forward. When this is over, when my husband is in prison or worse, I want safe passage out of Korea. New identity, new location, enough money to disappear permanently. That can be arranged. And one more thing. Nia's eyes met his. I want to know who's paying you. Not because it matters to my deal, but because I want to know who I should be grateful to when this is finished. Lee was silent for a long moment. Outside, Nia knew Taehyun's men were positioned throughout the neighborhood. Invisible but present, ready to intervene if necessary. But interference wasn't the plan. Information was the plan. The Park family, Lee said finally. Nia's blood went cold. The Parks. Han Seo-yeon's family. The political dynasty that Taehyun had been trying to alliance with through his relationship with the Mistress. They approached me 2 years ago. Lee's voice carried no particular emotion. Your husband's expansion was threatening their interests. His political influence was undermining their traditional power base. So they hired you to destroy him. They hired me to create opportunities. Lee's smile didn't reach his eyes. The scandal with Seo-yeon was elegant, actually. Using their own family member to destabilize the organization, then exposing her corruption to distance themselves from the fallout. Seo-yeon doesn't know? Seo-yeon knows nothing. Lee waved dismissively. She thinks she was pursuing your husband independently. She doesn't realize her own family positioned her as a weapon. Nia's mind raced through implications. The Parks had been playing a longer game than anyone realized. They'd sacrificed their own family member, used Seo Yun's ambition against her, to create the scandal that would bring down the Jang organization. And now they were offering Nia a deal through Lee, protection in exchange for betrayal. How do I know you'll honor our agreement? Nia asked carefully. You don't. Lee's honesty was unsettling. But consider your alternatives. Your husband will eventually discover what you've been planning. The documentation, the escape routes, the leverage you've accumulated, he'll find it all. His eyes hardened. When he does, do you think he'll forgive you? The question landed like a blow. My husband. Your husband has killed men for smaller betrayals. Lee leaned forward. Don't mistake recent reconciliation for genuine change. Jang Taehyun is exactly who he's always been. A predator who occasionally shows his prey affection before striking. Nia felt the performance slipping, genuine emotion bleeding through the calculated mask. He's changed, she heard herself say. Has he? Lee's voice carried something like pity. Or has he simply realized you're more useful as an ally than an enemy? The silence stretched between them. I'll contact you in 3 days, Nia said finally, standing. By then I'll have compiled the complete package. Everything you need to bring him down. And your escape arrangements? We'll discuss those when I deliver. Nia gathered her things. Until then, stay away from my penthouse, my contacts, and anyone connected to my husband's organization. Understood. Lee stood as well. Though I should warn you, the Parks are impatient. They want results within the month. They'll have them. Nia walked toward the door, feeling Lee's eyes on her back. Mrs. Jang. She paused without turning. When you deliver the information, bring the documentation on the Singapore accounts as well. The ones you've been hiding from your husband for 3 years. Nia's blood turned to ice. I thought I was offering leverage, she said carefully. It seems you already have it. Insurance. Lee's voice carried satisfaction. Everyone needs insurance. Nia left without responding. Outside, Seoul's afternoon traffic hummed with ordinary life. Millions of people unaware of the conspiracies being negotiated in their midst. She walked 3 blocks before entering a parked SUV with tinted windows. You heard everything? She asked. Every word. Taehyun's voice came from the driver's seat. The Parks. The Parks. Nia confirmed. They've been playing everyone, including their own family. Then they'll pay. Taehyun's voice carried ice. But first, the Singapore accounts. What were you planning with those? Nia met his eyes in the rearview mirror. Insurance, she said quietly. Same as Lee. Same as everyone in your world. Against me. Against everyone. Her voice dropped. You weren't the only threat I was protecting myself from. Taehyun was silent for a long moment. Show me, he said finally. Everything you've been hiding. Everything you've been planning. Complete transparency. And then we destroy the Parks together. His voice hardened. As partners. As equals. As something I should have treated you as from the beginning. Nia looked at his profile in the mirror. The sharp lines of his jaw, the controlled intensity of his expression, the man she'd married and hated and somehow never stopped wanting. Complete transparency goes both ways, she said. I know. Including the real reason you pursued Seo-yun. The political calculations. The plan to replace me. Everything. His voice carried weight. I'll show you everything. She reached forward and touched his shoulder. The first voluntary physical contact she'd initiated in weeks. Then let's go home, she said. We have a lot to discuss. The Parks have revealed themselves as the true enemy, sacrificing their own family member to destroy the Jang organization. Lee Sang-hoon remains a dangerous wild card with knowledge of Nia's secrets. And somewhere in Seoul, Tund Okafor is wrestling with doubts that could shift his loyalty at the worst possible moment. But the deadliest confrontation is still coming, and it will be between husband and wife. That night, complete transparency nearly destroyed them. The penthouse felt smaller as Taehyun spread documents across the dining table. Financial projections, political assessments, the clinical timeline for restructuring his marriage. Nia read each page in silence. the lawyer's recommendations, the financial provisions for her comfortable transition. The projected timeline for announcing his engagement to Han Seo-yun, 6 months from the date of the most recent document. December, she said quietly. You were planning to replace me by December. The timeline was hypothetical. Don't. Her voice carried an exhaustion that cut deeper than anger. You promised transparency. Don't pollute it with excuses. Taehyun fell silent. The Parks approached me 2 years ago, he said finally. Through intermediaries. They offered political protection in exchange for a familial alliance. Seo-yun. Her connection to the Park family was valuable. Her cousin controls import regulations that affect 40% of my shipping operations. Without political protection, my organization was vulnerable too. I understood the logic the first time. Nia's voice hardened. I'm asking why you didn't discuss it with me. Because I thought. He stopped. Started again. Because I didn't believe you could handle the complexity. The complexity of your betrayal? The complexity of the political landscape. His voice carried frustration. This world requires alliances that don't fit moral categories. Marriage in certain circles is a strategic instrument. I know what marriage is in your circles. Nia stood walking to the window. I've watched it for 5 years. The arrangements, the calculations, the women treated as assets to be traded. She turned back to face him. I just never thought you'd treat me that way. I wasn't. You were. Her voice cracked. You were going to replace me with a woman whose family is now trying to destroy you. And until 2 weeks ago, you had no idea she was a weapon aimed at your heart. The silence stretched. Now show me yours, Taehyun said quietly. Nia walked to her study and returned with her own documents. 3 years of careful preparation laid bare. The Singapore accounts. The escape routes. The leverage she'd gathered against his organization, his allies, his enemies. Taehyun read each page with growing stillness. You were going to disappear, he said finally. Take enough money to vanish, leave enough destruction to ensure no one followed. Yes. When I confirmed your plan to replace me. Nia's voice steadied. I was going to give you exactly what you seemed to want, my absence. Permanent and complete. Taehyun set down the final document. His hands, Nia noticed, trembled slightly, the first crack in his physical control she'd witnessed in years. We were both preparing to destroy each other, he said quietly. We were both preparing to survive. Nia's voice carried no accusation. That's what your world teaches. That's what living inside your empire requires. Pie world. He looked up at her. It became your world too. No. Nia shook her head slowly. I was never allowed inside your world. I was kept at its edges. Visible enough to be useful, invisible enough to be manageable. I learned to survive in the spaces you left unguarded. She sat across from him, the table between them covered with the evidence of their mutual betrayals. The question now, she continued, is whether any of this can be rebuilt. Or whether we've poisoned everything beyond repair. Taehyun was silent for a long moment. I don't know, he admitted. I've never rebuilt anything. I've only built and destroyed. Protected and eliminated. Those are the only patterns I understand. Then learn new ones. Nia's voice softened slightly. Or admit that you can't and let me go cleanly. I don't want to let you go. Wanting isn't enough. Her eyes held his. I need to know that you see me. Not the trophy. Not the political liability. Not the strategic asset. Me. I see you. Do you? Because a week ago you saw a problem to be solved. A foreign complication to be managed. What changed? Taehyun stood and walked around the table until he stood before her. You did, he said. You stopped pretending to be helpless. You stopped performing the role I'd assigned you. And I realized that the woman I'd been ignoring was more formidable than anyone in my organization. He crouched before her chair, bringing their eyes level. I see someone who could have destroyed me and didn't. Someone who built weapons while I wasn't watching, then chose not to use them. Someone who... His voice caught. Someone I never deserved. Nia's eyes glistened. You're right, she whispered. You didn't deserve me. I know. But I'm still here. Her voice cracked. After everything. After the lies and the neglect and the woman you were going to replace me with. I'm still sitting in this penthouse having this conversation instead of disappearing to Singapore. Why? The question hung between them. Because I made promises. Nia's voice steadied. When I married you, I promised to stand beside you. And even when you broke every promise you made to me, I couldn't break mine. That sounds like obligation, not? It's not obligation. She reached out and touched his face, the first tender contact between them in months. It's something I can't name. Something that kept me here when every rational calculation said I should run. Taehyun leaned into her touch, his eyes closing briefly. Whatever that something is, he said quietly, I want to earn it. Properly this time. Pretty words. I'll make them real. His eyes opened, holding hers with fierce intensity. Give me the chance. One crisis at a time. Nia withdrew her hand. The parks first. Lee first. Our survival first. And then we'll see what survives. The next 3 days passed in strategic preparation. Taehyun's organization mobilized with surgical precision, identifying Park family assets, mapping their political connections, documenting the relationships that made their power possible. Nia's intelligence proved invaluable. She'd spent years observing the web of alliances that sustained Seoul's elite families, cataloging vulnerabilities that no outsider could have identified. They worked side by side in the study, building the weapons that would destroy their enemies. And somewhere in that process something shifted. The silence between them changed quality, from cold distance to comfortable focus. Their hands brushed passing documents. Their eyes met across the room and held longer than strategy required. The tension remained, but it evolved. Less like a wound and more like a wire pulled taut. You're staring, Nia said on the third evening, not looking up from her laptop. I'm observing. Observing what? The way you think. Taehyun leaned against the doorframe. You've been cross-referencing Park family shell companies with political donation records. Looking for the money trail that connects them to Lee. And I've never watched anyone work the way you do. Complete focus. Perfect efficiency. No wasted motion. Nia finally looked up. Is that admiration or assessment? Both. He crossed to her desk, settling into the chair beside her. Show me what you've found. She turned the laptop toward him, and for the next hour they worked together. Tracing connections, building cases, constructing the evidence that would bring down an entire dynasty. When they finally stopped, midnight had passed. Enough for tonight, Taehyun said, closing the laptop. The timeline can wait until morning. His voice softened. You need rest. So do you. I'll manage. He stood, extending his hand. Come. You've been at this for 12 hours. Nia looked at his offered hand. Such a simple gesture, but weighted with everything that had changed between them. He took it. He helped her rise, and for a moment they stood closer than strategy required, her hand still in his. The master bedroom, she said quietly. I told you I'd move back for appearances. You don't have to. I want to. The admission surprised them both. Not for appearances. Not for strategy. I want to sleep in the same room as my husband. Something flickered in Taehyun's expression. Hope perhaps, or the fear of hoping. Are you sure? No. Nia's honesty was painful. But I'm tired of being sure. I'm tired of calculating every decision, protecting myself from every possibility. I just want to stop. For one night. Taehyun's grip tightened on her hand. Then stop, he said softly. For tonight, stop. He led her to the master bedroom, and when she emerged from the bathroom in the silk robe she'd been wearing to the guest room, she found him standing at the windows watching Seoul sleep. I used to watch you, he said without turning. In the early months, after you'd fallen asleep, I'd stand here and wonder how I'd found someone so beautiful. And then work consumed everything. Meetings and negotiations and problems that demanded constant attention. I stopped watching. Stopped wondering. His voice dropped. Stopped seeing you. Nia crossed the room and stood beside him. I knew, she said quietly. I watched you stop watching. I felt myself becoming furniture. Something present but unnoticed. I'm sorry. I know. She leaned against his shoulder. A small gesture, but the first of its kind in years. I believe you now. I didn't before, but I do now. Taehyun's arm came around her shoulders, gentle and hesitant. What changed? The way you've been working with me. Nia's voice was soft. Not managing me. Not protecting me from complexity. Actually listening. Actually valuing what I contribute. I should have been doing that all along. Yes. No absolution in her voice, just acknowledgement. But you're doing it now. That matters. They stood together, watching the city lights, feeling something tentative and fragile growing between them. We might still fail, Nia said finally. The parks might be stronger than we realize. Lee might have contingencies we haven't anticipated. Everything could collapse. It might. Are you afraid? Taehyun was quiet for a moment. I'm afraid of losing you, he admitted. Not the organization. Not the empire. I'm afraid that when this is over, you'll decide there's nothing worth staying for. And if I do, then I'll let you go. His voice carried genuine pain. Cleanly like you asked. With everything you need to disappear and build a life somewhere else. Nia turned to look at him. What if I decide to stay? Then I'll spend the rest of my life making sure you never regret it. The silence stretched between them, not cold this time but full. Take me to bed, Nia said quietly. Not, she hesitated. Just to sleep. Together. The way we used to before everything became so complicated. Taehyun led her to the bed, and when they lay down together, her head on his chest, his arm around her shoulders, something cracked open that had been sealed for years. I forgot this, she whispered. How it felt to be held by you. I forgot too. His voice was rough. I won't forget again. They slept that way until morning, tangled together like people who'd finally stopped fighting the current and decided to drown in each other instead. The call came at 7:23 a.m. Tun's voice was strained through the encrypted line. Nia, we have a problem. She stepped into the study, closing the door behind her. What kind of problem? Lee knows about our meeting 3 days ago. He knows you were working with Taehyun, that the whole thing was a setup to gather intelligence. Nia's blood went cold. How? He has a source inside the penthouse. The words landed like physical blows. Nia's mind raced through possibilities. The security staff, the housekeeping team, the drivers who transported them across Seoul. Who? She demanded. I don't know yet. But Lee contacted me this morning with an ultimatum. Tun's voice dropped. He says you have 48 hours to deliver genuine evidence against Taehyun. Or he releases everything he has on your Singapore accounts, your escape plans, your 3 years of surveillance on your husband's organization. He'll destroy my credibility. He'll destroy your marriage. Tun's voice carried urgency. If Taehyun sees that documentation presented a certain way out of context, it'll look like you've been planning to betray him all along. The reconciliation you've been building. I know what it will look like. Silence on the line. What do you want to do? Tund asked. Nia stared at the study wall, feeling the fragile hope of last night crumbling. I want to find the leak, she said quietly. Before Lee can use it again. And the ultimatum? Let me think. She ended the call and stood motionless in the study, watching morning light filter through the windows. Behind her the door opened. Trouble. Taehyun's voice carried immediate alertness. Nia turned to face him, and for a moment she considered lying. Protecting herself. Maintaining the careful balance they'd built. Then she remembered his words from the night before. Complete transparency. Lee knows about our setup, she said. He has a source inside the penthouse. Taehyun's expression hardened immediately. And he's threatening to release documentation about my activities over the past 3 years, Nia continued. Presented out of context, it will look like I've been planning to destroy you all along. The Singapore accounts. The surveillance. The escape routes. Everything. Nia's voice steadied. He's giving me 48 hours to deliver genuine evidence against you. Or he burns me to save himself. Taehyun was silent for a long moment. You could do it, he said finally. Deliver what he wants. Save yourself. I know. Why aren't you? Nia met his eyes with painful honesty. Because I don't want to destroy you anymore. Her voice cracked. Because something changed in the past 2 weeks and I can't pretend it didn't. Because last night. She stopped. Last night you held me like I mattered, she whispered. And I'm not ready to give that up. Taehyun crossed the room and pulled her into his arms. A fierce embrace that communicated what words couldn't. "We find the leak," he said against her hair. "We neutralize Lee. And we survive this together. And if we can't? Then we fail together." His arms tightened. "I'm done letting you face things alone." Nia buried her face in his chest, feeling something crack open inside her. The last walls she'd been maintaining, the final defenses she'd built against hope. "Together," she whispered. "Together." Finding the leak took 6 hours. Taehyun's security team swept the penthouse with equipment that detected surveillance devices, monitored communications, identified any technology that shouldn't exist in their space. They found nothing electronic, which meant the source was human. "Run backgrounds again," Taehyun ordered. "Everyone with access to this building. Everyone who's been inside in the past month." The list was shorter than it should have been. Taehyun had always limited access to his home. But one name appeared that made Nia's stomach drop. "The new driver," she said quietly. "Kim Jung. He started 3 weeks ago. Vetted through normal channels." "Check again." Nia's voice hardened. "Check his financials. His family connections. Anything that might connect him to the Parks or to Lee." It took another hour. Kim Jae-won's sister worked for a subsidiary of Park Family Holdings. A small connection, easily overlooked in standard background checks. But enough. "He's been reporting our movements," Taehyun said, studying the evidence. "Meeting locations. Schedule changes. Everything Lee needed to know. We were setting him up. Can we use him? We can do better than use him." Taehyun's voice carried ice. "We can feed him exactly what we want Lee to believe." Nia understood immediately. A counter setup. Lee thinks he has 48 hours of leverage. Instead, he has 48 hours of false information leading him exactly where we want him. And where do we want him? Somewhere the Parks can't protect him. Taehyun's smile didn't reach his eyes. Somewhere their political connections become liabilities instead of assets. He reached for his phone. Time to arrange a meeting with some old friends in the prosecutor's office. The trap took shape over the following 36 hours. Through Kim Jae-won, they fed Lee carefully constructed intelligence. Nia was preparing to deliver evidence, but she wanted to meet in person to negotiate better terms. A private location away from surveillance, where they could discuss her demands without risk of documentation. Lee agreed. He suggested a meeting at a warehouse in Yongsan, an industrial district where privacy could be assured and interference was unlikely. What Lee didn't know was that the warehouse belonged to a shell company controlled by Taehyun's organization. Every inch was wired with recording equipment. Every exit was monitored. And waiting in the shadows were prosecutors who had spent years trying to build cases against Seoul's criminal enterprises. Prosecutors who were very interested in evidence of political manipulation, illegal surveillance, and conspiracy to commit fraud. "You're sure about this?" Nia asked as they prepared. "Lee's crimes are genuine." Taehyun's voice was steady. "He's committed fraud, manipulation, and illegal surveillance. The evidence we'll capture tonight will be authentic, enough to bring him down without exposing our own vulnerabilities. And the Parks will find their political protection evaporating very quickly once Lee starts talking." Taehyun's smile was cold. Men like Lee always talk when their options narrow. Nia checked her appearance in the mirror. Simple clothing, minimal jewelry, the appearance of a woman desperate enough to betray her husband. "I still have to convince him," she said. "If he suspects the trap before we have what we need." "You'll convince him." Taehyun appeared behind her in the mirror. "You convinced me after all. And I've spent decades learning to read people. You wanted to believe me. Lee wants to believe you too." His hands settled on her shoulders. "He wants to believe that you're the weak link. The emotional vulnerability in my organization. Give him what he wants to see." Nia met his eyes in the mirror. "And when it's over?" "When it's over, we deal with the Parks." His voice dropped. "And then we deal with us." She turned to face him directly. "Us. The conversation we've been putting off." His hands moved to cup her face. "The one about whether this marriage becomes real or ends cleanly. And what do you want?" "Real." His voice carried absolute conviction. "I want real, Nia. I want the partnership I should have offered from the beginning. I want to wake up beside you without calculating what you're useful for. I want. He paused, searching for words. I want to deserve you. Actually deserve you. Nia's eyes glistened. One crisis at a time, she whispered. But I hear you. And I want to believe you. That's enough. He kissed her forehead gently. That's more than enough for now. She pulled back, steadying herself. Time to end Lee Sang-hoon. Time to end all of it. The warehouse was cold despite the summer night. Nia arrived alone, appearing alone at least. Taehyun's men were positioned throughout the building, invisible but present. Recording equipment captured every angle. Lee emerged from the shadows like a man who'd already won. Mrs. Jang. His voice carried satisfaction. I'm glad you saw reason. I saw survival. Nia kept her voice appropriately desperate. You left me no choice. Choice is a luxury for people with options. Lee gestured to a table where documents waited. Shall we discuss terms? Nia approached slowly, buying time for the recording equipment to capture everything. I want guaranteed passage out of Korea, she said. New identity, clean documentation, no trail that anyone could follow. Agreed. I want access to the accounts my husband doesn't know about. The ones I've been building for 3 years. Also agreed. Lee's smile widened. You've thought this through. I've had 3 years to think it through. Nia let bitterness color her voice. 3 years of watching my husband plan to replace me. 3 years of preparing for the moment when I had to run. And the evidence? Nia reached into her bag and extracted a USB drive. Everything, she said. Financial records, political payments, documented crimes. Enough to put my husband in prison for the rest of his life. Lee reached for the drive. Before you take it, Nia said, pulling back slightly, I want to know something. What? The Parks. You told me they hired you to destroy my husband's organization. But that doesn't make sense. Lee's expression flickered. They were negotiating with him, Nia continued. Trying to build an alliance through Han Seo-yeon. Why would they simultaneously hire someone to destroy the organization they were trying to merge with? Politics are complicated. Politics are calculated. Nia's voice hardened. And nothing about this situation calculates. Unless. She paused. Unless the Parks weren't really hiring you to destroy my husband. Lee's mask slipped slightly. They were hiring you to destroy me, Nia said. To eliminate the African wife before the alliance with Seo-yeon could proceed. To make sure there were no complications, no foreign complications, when they merged their family with my husband's power. The silence stretched. You're cleverer than I expected, Lee admitted. Everyone underestimates me. Nia's voice went cold. That's why I'm still alive. Not for long, I'm afraid. Lee's hand moved toward his jacket. This meeting was never about evidence. It was about eliminating the last obstacle to nothing. Taehyun's voice came from the shadows. Lee spun, hand reaching for his weapon, but Taehyun's men were already emerging from concealment. A dozen armed figures who had been invisible until this moment. The recording equipment captured everything, Taehyun continued, stepping into the light. Your confession about the Parks. Your conspiracy to eliminate my wife. Your entire operation, documented in your own words. Lee's face went pale. The prosecutors are waiting outside, Taehyun added. They're very interested in discussing political corruption with someone who has intimate knowledge of Park family activities. You can't. I can. Taehyun's voice carried ice. You threatened my wife. You conspired to destroy my marriage. You manipulated Han Seo-yeon, a foolish woman but not an evil one, into becoming a weapon. He stepped closer. Did you think I wouldn't respond? The Parks will protect me. The Parks will sacrifice you. Taehyun's smile didn't reach his eyes. That's what powerful families do when their operations are exposed. They cut their losses and distance themselves from the fallout. He nodded to his men. Take him. Lee struggled briefly, but it was futile. Within minutes he was being escorted toward waiting vehicles. Toward prosecutors who had spent years building cases that would now succeed. Nia stood alone in the warehouse, watching the man who'd tried to destroy her being led away. Taehyun appeared beside her. It's over, he said quietly. Is it? Nia's voice carried exhaustion. The Parks are still out there. Han Seo-yeon still exists. The scandal is still burning through Seoul's underground. The parks will be handled. Taehyun's voice hardened. Lee will provide everything the prosecutors need. By this time next week, their political protection will have evaporated. And Seo-yeon becomes irrelevant. Taehyun turned to face her. She was a weapon they built without her knowledge. Once the parks fall, she becomes just another socialite with connections that no longer matter. Nia was quiet for a moment. She should know, she said finally. What her family did to her. How they used her. Why do you care? Because she's a victim too. Nia's voice softened. A stupid victim who made terrible choices. But still a victim. Taehyun studied his wife. The woman who had every reason to want Han Seo-yeon destroyed and was instead showing compassion. You're remarkable, he said quietly. I'm tired. Nia leaned against him. Take me home. Home. The word carried weight. Is that what the penthouse is now? Nia thought about the question, really thought about it. It could be, she said finally. If we make it that way. Then we'll make it that way. He put his arm around her shoulders and led her toward the waiting vehicle. Behind them, the warehouse that had been meant to be her death became just another empty building in Seoul's industrial district. The war was ending. What came next was something neither of them knew how to navigate. But they would learn together. Han Seo-yeon received the news 3 days later. The documentation arrived at her apartment without warning. Detailed evidence of her family's conspiracy, their manipulation of her ambitions, their willingness to sacrifice her for political gain. Attached was a handwritten note. You were used. By everyone. Your family. Lee. Perhaps even my husband. But you weren't evil, just foolish and ambitious. Those aren't crimes worth destroying yourself over. Leave Seoul. Build something new. And never let anyone use you as a weapon again. Nia Balogun. Seo-yeon read the note 3 times. Then she began packing. The Park family's collapse was swift and brutal. Lee Sang-hoon, facing decades in prison, provided prosecutors with everything: documentation of political corruption, bribery networks, illegal surveillance operations. The evidence cascaded through Seoul's political establishment like dominoes falling. By the end of the month, 3 Park family members had been indicted. Their political allies had scattered. Their business interests were being systematically dismantled by competitors who smelled blood. The selfie that had started everything became a footnote in a much larger scandal. And Nia Balogun, the African wife who'd been publicly humiliated, emerged as something entirely unexpected. A survivor. A strategist. A woman who'd brought down a dynasty without raising her voice. 1 month after the warehouse confrontation, Tund Okafor came to say goodbye. He met Nia at a cafe in Insadong, neutral territory away from the penthouse and its complicated associations. You're leaving, Nia said. Singapore. Tund's smile was bittersweet. Fresh start. New opportunities. Away from the chaos I helped create. You didn't create chaos. You helped me survive. Did I? Tund's voice dropped. Or did I help you become something you never wanted to be? Nia considered the question. I became what survival required, she said finally. That's not your fault. That's just life in this world. It doesn't have to be your world anymore. Tund leaned forward. You could leave too. Start fresh somewhere the Jang name doesn't carry weight. I know. Nia's voice was soft. But I'm choosing to stay. Why? Because something changed. She met his eyes with painful honesty. Because my husband changed. Because we're building something real or trying to. And I want to see if it's possible. And if it's not? Then I'll leave. Nia's voice hardened slightly. But on my terms. Not running. Not escaping. Walking away because I chose to. Tun studied her for a long moment. You've changed too, he said finally. The woman I met 5 years ago, she was brilliant but afraid. Isolated. Uncertain of her place in this country. He reached across the table and took her hand. You're not uncertain anymore. No. Nia's smile was small but genuine. I'm not. Good. Tun squeezed her hand and released it. Take care of yourself, Nia Balogun. And don't let anyone, not even your husband, make you smaller than you are. I won't. He stood, straightening his jacket. If you ever need me. I know where to find you. Tun smiled. A real smile this time. Goodbye, Nia. Goodbye, Tund. He walked away, disappearing into the Insadong crowd. Nia sat alone at the cafe table, watching him go, feeling the weight of everything that had changed. She had come to Korea as a woman in love, naive about what that love would cost. She was staying as a woman in power, clear-eyed about what power required. The question now was whether love and power could coexist. She was about to find out. 3 months after the scandal, Jang Taehyun surprised his wife with a trip. Not a business trip. Not a strategic meeting in another city. A genuine vacation. The first they'd taken together since their honeymoon 5 years earlier. They went to Jeju Island, to a private villa overlooking the ocean. No security details. No emergency communications. Just the two of them and the sound of waves against volcanic rock. You're staring again, Nia said, lying on a lounger in the afternoon sun. I'm observing. Taehyun settled beside her. You look relaxed. I am relaxed. She turned her head to look at him. I forgot what that felt like. Me too. They lay in comfortable silence, watching clouds drift across a sky so blue it hurt. I've been thinking, Taehyun said finally. About the organization. The empire. Everything I've spent my life building. Nia waited. It's not worth it, he said quietly. Not if it costs me this. Not if it means choosing between power and this. What are you saying? I'm saying I want to change things. His voice carried unusual vulnerability. Legitimate the business operations. Pull back from the darker aspects. Build something that doesn't require constant warfare. Nia sat up slowly. That's a significant change. You're worth a significant change. His eyes met hers. Everything I almost lost. You, us, the possibility of something real. I'm not willing to risk it again. The organization won't accept that easily. The organization answers to me. His voice hardened briefly before softening again. But I want to do it together. Build whatever comes next as partners. Equals. The way we should have been from the beginning. Nia studied him. This man she'd married and hated and somehow found her way back to. You're serious. Completely. It will take years. The transition, the restructuring, the political maneuvering. I know. He reached for her hand. I have years. If you're willing to spend them with me. The question hung between them. The real question, the one they'd been circling since the scandal first exploded. Are you staying? Do you want me? Is there something here worth building? Nia looked at their joined hands. Darker skin against lighter. Two people from different worlds who'd somehow collided and couldn't quite separate. Ask me properly, she said quietly. Ask you what? You know what? Taehyun's expression shifted, understanding dawning. He moved from the lounger to kneel beside her chair, her hand still in his. Nia Balagan, he said, his voice rough with emotion. I married you 5 years ago for reasons that had nothing to do with deserving you. I took you for granted. I planned to replace you. I nearly destroyed everything by treating you as an asset instead of a partner. His grip tightened. But something changed. You changed it. By being stronger than I expected, fiercer than I imagined, more formidable than anyone I've ever encountered. He raised her hand to his lips. I'm asking you to marry me again. Not legally, we're already married. But really, genuinely. To build something together that's based on who we actually are, not who I assumed we should be. His eyes held hers. Will you stay? Not because you have no options, but because you choose me. Nia felt tears sliding down her cheeks. The first she'd allowed herself since the scandal began. That's a big ask, she whispered. After everything. I know. I'll need time. To trust completely. To believe this is permanent. I'll give you time. And space. To be myself, not just your wife. Whatever you need. She was quiet for a long moment, feeling the ocean breeze against her tear-stained face. Yes, she said finally. Yes. Yes, I'll stay. Yes, I choose you. Yes, I'll build something with you. Something real, something based on who we actually are. The joy that transformed Taehyun's face was like nothing she'd seen before. Genuine, unguarded, almost boyish in its intensity. He pulled her from the lounger into his arms, and for a long moment they just held each other, feeling the weight of everything they'd survived and everything they were about to become. I love you, he said against her hair. I should have said it more. I should have said it constantly. But I love you, Nia. I know. Her voice was muffled against his chest. I've known for a while. Even when you were terrible at showing it. I'll be better. You'd better be. She pulled back to look at him, her eyes still wet. Because I'm not going through this again. One scandal, one mistress, one almost collapse of our marriage is enough for any lifetime. Agreed. His smile was soft. One is definitely enough. She kissed him, their first real kiss in months, possibly years. A kiss without calculation or strategy or hidden agenda. Just connection. When they finally separated, the sun was setting over Jeju's waters, painting everything in shades of gold and rose. So, Nia said, settling back against his chest. What happens now? Now we go home. Taehyun's arms tightened around her. And we start building. Building what? Whatever we want. His voice carried wonder. For the first time in my life, I'm not planning 3 moves ahead. I'm just here. With you. Nia smiled. A real smile, unguarded and free. That sounds terrifying. It is. He pressed a kiss to her temple. But I'm learning to like terrifying things. I've noticed. They watched the sunset together, 2 people who'd nearly destroyed each other learning to build instead. The scandal that had started with a selfie had ended with something neither of them expected. A marriage. A real one. The kind worth fighting for. 1 year later. The invitation arrived on cream paper with gold embossing. Mr. and Mrs. Jang Taehyun request the pleasure of your company at a celebration of their 6th wedding anniversary. Seoul's elite circles buzzed with speculation. The Mafia boss's marriage, the one everyone had written off after the scandal, was not only surviving but thriving. Nia Balogun had become something unexpected. A force in her own right. Her intelligence network, once built for survival, now supported legitimate business operations. Her understanding of political dynamics, once a defensive weapon, now guided strategic partnerships across Asia. She was no longer the trophy wife. She was the partner everyone had underestimated. At the anniversary celebration, held in the penthouse that had witnessed so much conflict, Nia stood beside her husband, greeting guests who had once whispered about her deportation. You're enjoying this, Taehyun murmured between arrivals. I'm enjoying watching them squirm. Nia's smile was serene. Every person who predicted my downfall is now smiling at my face. It's satisfying. Petty. Realistic. He squeezed his hand. I've learned to take pleasure where I find it. And where do you find it? She turned to face him, this man who had nearly destroyed her and instead became something worth keeping. Right here, she said quietly. Right now. With you. His expression softened. The look he reserved only for her, the one that made everything worth it. I love you, he said. I know. Her eyes sparkled. You've gotten better at saying it. I've had practice. Keep practicing. He kissed her cheek as another guest arrived and they turned to greet them together. United, aligned, formidable. Later that night, after the guest had departed and the penthouse fell quiet, they stood at the windows looking out at Seoul. The city that almost destroyed us, Nia said. The city we conquered instead. Taehyun's arm came around her shoulders. Together. Together. She leaned into him. I like the sound of that. So do I. They stood in comfortable silence, watching the city lights spread beneath them like a promise. The selfie that started everything had been deleted from the internet, scrubbed away as part of Han Seo-yeon's quiet departure from Seoul. The scandal that had threatened to end everything had become a footnote in their story. What remained was this. 2 people who'd learned to see each other. 2 people who'd chosen each other. 2 people who'd survived the fire and emerged stronger. Nia closed her eyes, feeling her husband's heartbeat against her back, feeling the solid presence of a life rebuilt from wreckage. She had come to Korea as a woman in love. She had almost left as a woman in pieces. She was staying as something else entirely. A woman who had won. The Mafia boss's mistress sent a selfie with him. His wife's response ended everything. But what ended wasn't the marriage. It was everything that had been keeping them apart.